I remember just walking along the street and sometimes people just tell you how's it going, and then I thought you're supposed to have like a whole conversation, so I just pause and wait for the conversation, but then they just walk off.
Hello, guys. Welcome to International Student Support You're Not Alone podcast. My name is Dima, and I will be your host. In today's episode, we will be speaking to Abhi from Mumbai about life in Canada as an international student. We're going to start off by our guest introducing himself. So if you can please introduce yourself.
Sure. Can I just quickly start off?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Awesome.
We're sort of like, I'm just here to I don't know, have a discussion, but I'm not being interviewed.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's just you. Yeah.
It's just me. Okay.
Go for it.
Amelia
That
is
makes
here
sense.
to join in with your conversation.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So my name's
Amelia, feel free to talk whenever you want, okay?
Gotcha.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around Zoom, so I think I'm getting better now. But so my name's Abhishek Shetty, and you can just call me Abhi. Um, and I'm in my second year of the Bachelor of Education program at the Faculty of Education, and so I'd say I'm a professional student in that sense, but I'm also an international student. I grew up in the Middle East, in a country called Bahrain, and I did my schooling there, and then decided to move to Mumbai in India for my undergraduate and master's degree. And I spent some time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just said wow.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been in a couple of places. So I was just doing like a quick intro, but then I decided to come back to school after spending some time in the job market, and I realized I wanted to be a teacher, and I'm really passionate about education and working with students. So yeah, I guess I'm here. I moved here in August 2019, and I'm just happy to be here now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're currently in Canada, right?
I am, yes. I'm based in London right now, so I'm right here in Canada.
Perfect. So you've been here for about a year and a half now?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. So now we're just gonna kind of talk more about your experience and you moving to Canada. So when you moved to Canada, was it your first time here or had you visited before?
So I've never been to Canada before. It was my first time here. My sister stays in New York, so I've been to North America, but not Canada. No. Yeah.
Okay, so can you just kind of just give us a general idea of how was your experience when you first moved here? How were your feelings before and after? Just kind of give us some kind of your experience in the beginning.
Sure, Dima. Um I was nervous like any other international student, and I was nervous. Would I make friends? Would I adjust to the culture? And something you often hear as an international student is the weather. And I grew up in Bahrain, which is basically a desert. And so I wasn't really used to the climate being so cold. So I was nervous about that. I was nervous about making friends. I was also nervous about my course and how that would turn out. But I think overall, it's just been a really pleasant experience. You have a really supportive community here, with the international student groups and the IESC and the events they do, like Global Cafe. So I tried turning up for those events uh, as much as I could when I started off. But that is the positive side. There was the negative side too, where it's definitely a struggle because. Um, you don't really make friends as soon as you would have expected to, when you start off.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I made as many friends. Then it took me some time to adjust socially too, because I don't
Yeah,
think.
Yeah, which honestly I think is totally fine. Like it's totally fine. Like it's kind of like part of the process for
Mhm.
you not to like make 10 friends on your first day or even month or even year, you know? I think like it's just a process and it's super normal. I feel like many people kind of like including myself get nervous about the fact that like, oh my God, I don't know 100 people already like in first year, you know, or like in my first year of like moving here, which is
Yeah,
something I completely agree with.
yeah.
Amelia is like, can you like share with us your experience with like, you know, just your transition to university and like kind of compare it with that of Abhishek? Because like I feel like no matter what or like where you're from, there's always this feeling of nervousness, you know, transitioning into university or like a new place or yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So it was I felt like it was a little bit unreal the first week or so. Like I knew going in I probably wouldn't make friends right away. Like I didn't know anybody coming here, and like my friends that were going to come here with me, they like all stayed in Calgary. Like I'm from Calgary. They all stayed in Calgary because like they're just taking stuff online, and I was like the only one moving here, so that was definitely hard. And I sort of expected to not have friends for the first week or so. And they actually turned out a little bit better than I expected. And I met a couple of people like quicker than I expected for sure. I think it was just harder than it would have been just because so much of it was online and it's just harder to meet people
Mm-hmm.
and to also find people that are like maybe in the same major as you or like just even like the same residence as you because we can't really
Yes.
go out as much. So that was hard. But I think just not like don't worry about it too much when it first happens and just sort of like go with the flow. Like I didn't really try very hard to like really go out and find people. I sort of just like did my thing and then I was still able to meet people. So I think just like not being too stressed about it, it definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I just have a question for you, Abby. So, um, what would you say played the biggest role in you like meeting new people? Like, what was the your go-to way, or for example, what really like you know made you meet people? Like, what do you think? What would you say? This is like the first thing that comes to mind that helped you make friends, I guess.
mm. So I mean, it was so nice to hear Amelia speaking because I think those were really kind words, and I hope more students hear that when they move here. But just to answer your question, off the top of my head, I think two things that really helped me were number one, probably participating within my faculty. So, at the Faculty of Education, for instance, we've got this body called the Education Students Council, and I decided to, run for office, and that's one great way to, meet other people in your program and meet other students that are passionate about the same thing. Your faculty may also organize public lectures and events by professors, so I think, turning up for these events, not just in your department, but also in other faculties, is a great way to meet other students and professors on campus. And the other important thing that really helped me was um, becoming a member of a few clubs on campus. So we do know that Western has a lot of great clubs, and there's almost a club for anything. And I I come from I'm South Asian, so I I'm from Mumbai, and a lot of people in Mumbai play cricket. So Western had a really interesting cricket club, and
Amazing.
yeah, and so I like three of my best friends here in London now were all from that club. And we've been really close friends for the whole year. So I really cherish that opportunity. I also joined the table tennis club and WIXA, which is the Western Indo Cultural Student Association. So I think there is an opportunity in these clubs to really socialize and meet great new people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I would say like these clubs really help in meeting so many people. I myself have met like so many wonderful people who are like currently still in my life, just
Hmm.
like by joining clubs. Like you never know how much of an impact joining a club or like attending an event can like have on your life. Just like
Yeah.
maybe until you meet the new people who are like stick with you for the rest of your like at least university life, which is yeah, amazing. I want to just say and add to that that I strongly recommend like any international student or like any student in general who's new in Western to like join clubs and attend events, because I feel these really 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 help in like help you make connections with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely feel that. So like my probably like best friend in Ange right now, was like our first day in Ange and there was an event and I woke up 5 minutes before the event and then my soft texted me. He's like, "Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Can you wait for me or not?" And I felt like normally I don't want to make people wait, right? So I was like, "If you can't wait, just go." And he was like, "No, no, we'll wait for you." So I was like 10 minutes late. I was like, I didn't even eat. I didn't like do anything. I just like run downstairs. And we went, and that's how I met her. And like I probably wouldn't know she exists if I didn't go that day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of magical, I guess. But like, yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
weird because I really wasn't gonna go.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
definitely.
magical is the right word to use, honestly.
Did you have any such experiences, Dima, yourself?
Like joining clubs and attending events.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Like last year, I wasn't really, because like first year engineering honestly is like stressful, and I was like pre-stressed already, because I was like super worried, and I was like my whole focus should be like solely like studying and like academics. But I've attended a couple of events by the women in engineering clubs. I, volunteered at fall preview day and March preview day, which like I met so many people just by attending these events. And then I attended like a couple events from like random clubs, because I'm Arab. I'm from Lebanon, so I attended a couple events by the ASA, which is the Arab Student Association, and yeah, I also met people through there. So yeah, I would say that clubs are amazing, and like just attending events, even if it's like once a month or once every 2 months, can like open up opportunities for you to like meet so many people. Um, speak. Let's get like into the online and like with the whole COVID situation. So I kind of want to ask you. So um, did you want to leave the country, or like are you thinking of leaving the country since everything is online now? And like is the whole COVID situation and you being an international student causing you like any anxiety, or are you worried that if you leave you might not go back into Canada or anything like that? Because just to clarify kind of my point, when this whole situation happened I wanted to go back home, but I also didn't want to risk not being able to get back into Canada. So I decided to stay here, but though I was like very upset about like not being able to go home and be with my family. So has like a similar situation happened to you, or just talk to us more about your experience with the online learning and you being an international student?
Yeah. So I mean, it was really hard at the start. I mean, most people do want to go back home in the summers and in winter break, but and just like you, I felt like there was a risk about going back and not being able to come, and you're not really sure, with the cases rising in different countries in different ways. You just want to stay where you are, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully things would pass and get better, but they didn't seem to get better throughout the summer. So I ended up being in London for most of the summer. I honestly didn't really have too many plans to go back. I mean, if I did, I wanted to catch up on some coursework and some reading. So it was it was a quiet summer. I didn't have too much coursework, but I tried to explore some of the trails here in London, and I had a couple of friends that stayed back too. So we had a little bubble of 2 to 3 people, and we try to find ways to entertain each other, go for walks or play a sport or something like that. But I know students that struggled a lot with um, making that decision about going back, because I have a friend who's from Turkey that decided to go back when the fall semester started, and there are these new directives now that the university is still trying to negotiate ways for international students to come back. So I'm sure he's in a fix, with that situation, and yeah, I mean that's my sort of take on travel during this COVID crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Since like there's not much basically to talk about that, let's like switch into back into like transitioning into Canada. So
Mhm.
were there any barriers in terms of like culture barrier, language barriers, or like weather? Was there anything that you found was particularly hard to adjust to, or was it like, just like normal?
Um, I mean, I think every student deals with it differently, but I think there
Mm-hmm.
were so many barriers for me the first few months. Maybe food was a barrier. You know, I don't think I was very comfortable with.
Amelia is nodding her head.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, Amelia, you can share your experience too, and I'd love to hear.
I just don't particularly love cheese, but cheese is in everything. So I've gotten to the point where I tell people I'm lactose intolerant when I'm really not. And it's I just don't it's definitely like a change, I think.
Yeah,
Hmm.
food is definitely an issue. The other thing would be, I think the weather is also something you really have to try and adjust to. I didn't think I had the right jacket for the first, month or two of the winter, and I think I
Yeah.
realized that really late, and I had to get another one. So I think it's great. I know the USC and the international student group within the USC has put out some really nice videos about buying winter gear, which
Yeah.
I think would be really helpful for international students, who are trying to figure these things out. So the weather, food, language sometimes, because I don't know, sometimes there are different kinds of English, right? There's not
Yeah.
just one kind of English.
Yeah.
uh, But then sometimes it becomes hard for people to pick up your accent, and I think
Hmm.
you try and adjust the way you can. So in that sense, language is also a sort of a barrier. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree about that. I personally, my accent, like growing up, like I grew up in Nigeria, so my accent was definitely not Canadian.
Hmm.
So in the beginning, like transitioning into Canada, I was like kind of insecure about my accent. It wasn't like Canadian, or it wasn't like the way everyone spoke. And I heard so many stories when I met like international students about them, like people trying to like look down on them just because like they don't have the perfect accent, or like
Hmm.
purposely seeming like they don't understand what the person is saying just because their accent is different. And just like hearing these stories was really like sad to me, because like international students shouldn't have to go through this. I mean, it's English at the end, right? So that's something I really want to stress on, because just like hearing these stories, I just want to say that never ever, like to anyone who's listening to this podcast, because this is something I keep hearing, never ever feel insecure about your accent, because if anything, I feel like having your special accent gives you an identity, and a kind of like makes you different from everybody else, which is like really beautiful. So keep talking the way you do, because at the end of the day, it's English you're speaking, right? So
Yeah.
like I'm pretty sure everyone understands it. So yeah.
Yeah, those are great points, Seema. And just to add to what you said, I remember one of my professors just telling me this. I remember talking to him about, something somebody said that I didn't feel too good about with regards to my accent. And he told me that sometimes it's so important for people to understand intent and not, so sometimes people correct your grammar, your pronunciation, but maybe that's not the best thing to do in situations, especially when people already feel so conscious about their the way they speak. I think understanding that at the end of the day the person is trying to communicate something to you, and if they
Hmm.
do it wrong once, that's okay. You don't have to call them out on it publicly. Rather, they're trying their best, and there isn't a perfect way to say anything. As humans, we're always trying, right?
Yeah, definitely. Amelia, would you like to share anything, or like kind of anything about this topic at all?
Yeah, for sure. I was also pretty conscious about my accent. I moved to Canada when I was in grade four. And I felt like, at first I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to get rid of it, like I have time, right? But then eventually I felt like, just to accept it for what it is, because like it sounds fine, people understand me, like there's no reason to try really hard to get rid of it. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then just after that I started learning other languages as well, and then you just come to realize that like an accent is going to probably stay with you forever, so you might as well embrace it. um
Exactly. Yeah, amazing. Honestly, yeah, I feel it's better, and it's like you're more comfortable, and I feel it suits the person more when they like stick to their accent, and like Amelia mentioned, like kind of embrace it. So especially for international students, like your accent might not be perfect, and it shouldn't be perfect, right? So it's part of who we are, it's part of our identity. So yeah, I just figured we'd touch on this topic in particular because it's something that I've been constantly like hearing about, and it's something I personally experienced because like I was not very like, I was like a bit insecure about my accent, but then moving on I learned to like embrace it. And yeah, um what's your favorite thing about Western, or the culture at Western?
Um, Let me see. There is so much actually. Uh, I mean, I really enjoy going to the library and getting books. It's weird. I Over the summer I decided to borrow so many books, and I really liked studying at Weldon. Yeah, I guess that's more of an academic answer. But I also like hanging out at UCC, um, getting coffee there, trying out the food at some of the places there. And I also really enjoy when things were better, when COVID was not that big of an issue. I'd go onto the Western University website, and I'd follow different departments on Twitter or Facebook, and they'd often have public lectures and events and workshops. And these are often open to students across the campus. So that was something I also enjoyed doing, just going for these interdepartmental gatherings, events, talks. So yeah, these are some of the things I really enjoy about Western.
Amazing. Amelia, what about you? Since you're a first year, I feel like it would be nice to have your like input in this.
For sure. I think the Edge community has been so supportive, and I was like really surprised because I come from a pretty like competitive part of my high school because of the program we were in. But Edge is so supportive, and like the softs were super nice, and they always be like telling you about like tips and tricks and like things that you wouldn't know until you go through a year of Edge. And it was just really nice knowing that like from the very beginning, as well as like whenever I feel like you post a question online or you're just like, can somebody help me with this, like there's always somebody in the group chat that's willing to help. I think they're just like super supportive, and like the emphasis of Eng being a team sport at Western, and sort of like in general for like any faculty at Western, I feel like it's something that's
Mm-hmm.
really like just throughout the university. It's something I really appreciate. So yeah.
What is
Yeah,
Edge, Amelia? I'm sorry, I don't know
Like
what Edge is.
engineering, like the faculty.
like
Oh,
short
okay.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely agree with you, Amelia. Like me too, like being an engineering student, I thought it was gonna be competitive, but it's not at all. I feel like it's a team sport. Like everyone is ready to help everyone else. It's not this, toxic kind of competition. There are always people who are like willing to help, and like I feel like there's constant support for this program in particular, or I don't know if it's because it's the program I'm in, but I definitely see and I feel that there's so much support towards like students in engineering, just in like in general, from like softs to other students within the like faculty trying to help each other. So yeah, I definitely agree with you, Amelia. So one of like the final questions would be, what's something you wish people like here in Canada, or like just like you know like your transition into Canada, what's something you feel people are more mindful of? Yeah,
Would this be from like a Canadian perspective in terms of what
I
we
feel
should?
like in an international student's perspective, like what's something you feel people should be more mindful of towards international students? I guess this is a better way to like phrase my question.
Yeah. Let me see. That's a tough one to answer. I,
Yeah, no worries.
but
And if like you don't feel like answering, that's totally fine as well.
no, I mean, before, just to give me some time to think, I'd like to thank the both of you for putting this together and your team. I think all of y'all are doing such wonderful work, and it's nice that you bring Amelia and me because I feel like you have two different perspectives over here. I think I'd represent more of the graduate, professional student, international student perspective, while Amelia will probably give you the undergraduate perspective. So I
Yeah.
think that is something that I really am thankful to you for. No, to answer your question, I'd say like international students already face a lot of barriers in terms of adjusting to the new culture. Maybe just being more inviting, uh, in terms of helping us understand the culture too. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know too much about Canadian sports, but I had a friend that saw a hockey game with me and helped me understand some of the rules. And I went for a Western game last year when things were better. I know it's so much harder with COVID to do all these other things, which makes it so much more challenging for an
Yeah,
international student.
definitely.
But like going for one of these games, or um, I know the Thanksgiving uh, day is like a big thing, and there were a couple of friends that invited me for a Thanksgiving meal, and
Amazing.
they told me about why it's important in Canadian culture. So, little things like that made me feel more accepted. So sometimes it's hard for us to ask for these opportunities. So if the university and Canadian students that understand it better, would help us understand some of this better, I think that would really help us transition more effectively in the long run.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer, honestly. It's kind of like it's something you wish like they would do more, kind of like be more inviting towards their culture in terms of like explaining it better to us, because I feel like there are many cultural differences. I mean, you were from Mumbai, but like you grew up in Bahrain, so I feel like there are such like we're all the way like it's like two polar opposites in terms of like culture. And it's the same thing for me. Like I grew up in Nigeria, I'm from Lebanon. Like transitioning into Canada was a bit like rocky, because like these cultural differences, it's like here people on the like when you're walking, like they say hi, like they're super friendly, small talk. Back home it's like nobody speaks to anyone on the streets, everyone like minds their business. And like it's kind of like rude if you like try to like interrupt someone while they're doing their thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these things are kind of different. So like just kind of like adjusting to this whole culture and like the atmosphere here in general. And
Yeah.
them being, and honestly like they are very like inviting, like you said, like you're invited for Thanksgiving. I feel like they're always very inviting, and like they always want to teach you more about their culture, which is
That's
which is really beautiful, honestly.
That's true. I actually have a funny story, and I remember when I moved here, and this is about small talk, and that's something I think international students get better at. But I remember just walking along the street, and sometimes people just tell you, "How's it going?" And then I thought you're supposed to have like a whole conversation, so I just pause and wait for the conversation, but then they just walk off. I'm like, okay, that was just a greeting. So that's something that I figured out. So that's a question in the form of a greeting. You don't have to stay
Yeah.
back and have a conversation.
Yes, exactly. Little things like that. It's just kind of like you feel embarrassed in the beginning, but as you move
Yeah.
on, like you adjust. Amelia, do you have like any like stories like that? Or like Abby, you as well, like if there are any stories you would like to share, because I feel like what you just told me, someone else has told me before. So like it's something I feel like international students in general go through, or like anyone who's like not like originally from Canada or like didn't grow up here. So yeah, if you Amelia have any like short story to share.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one that just goes to show how different the culture is so in China, if you compliment somebody's shirts, like you genuinely really love it and you have like a reason to like compliment, like you actually want to know where they got it or something like that. But here I feel like it's more of like a kickstart to conversation. You don't have to like mean it super deeply, right? So I was wearing this like solid black shirt, no design whatsoever, and somebody came and she was like, "Oh my God, I love your shirt." And I just like froze. I was like, why? Like what do you mean? Like, it's just and that was a little bit awkward. And I think just from that, I learned that like, oh, like she just said that so we can like start having a conversation. It wasn't actually like, the point wasn't the show.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, like let's talk. So
Yeah.
just realizing that like that difference there was really funny.
Yeah. Abby, is there anything you would like to share, or like just like a piece of advice you would like to give any international student like listening to this podcast?
Um, I mean, nothing about the stories, but I think as an international, just to close it off, something that's
Yeah.
also helped me is to participate in activities beyond the campus. So I feel like London, like the London Museum, there's the London Music Club, and they often do events and gatherings, and you also have a lot of great restaurants in London, and these are often restaurants from different cultures. They're not necessarily from, so you have great Chinese restaurants, great Indian restaurants, great Middle Eastern cuisine. So I think that's something that I would push more, and that's something I started doing a lot later. In my first year I was mostly on campus, and then I started going out and saying there's so much to do in London, like explore the trails, go to the museum, spend time in different restaurants. And I know the music club does like weekly events. Again, these are things you can't do now, but when things do get better, I highly recommend exploring things beyond the university too.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I feel like this is such an amazing point. Like, do things beyond like campus. Try to like get to know London even more since it's where you're gonna be staying. Amelia, as a first year student, is there like any piece of advice you would like to share?
I think like embracing the internet as a way, like as a legitimate way of making friends and communicating with people, because at first I felt like I would text people online, but then I felt like we weren't really making a connection, and I wouldn't try super hard because I felt like it wasn't possible to really get to know someone online. But by now I have a lot of friends that like I have not seen their face, but we're still really good friends because we text so much and we talk about like school and things like that. So I think just embracing the fact you might not be able to go in person with someone, but understanding you can still have like a very close friendship with them just by talking online. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, especially given the time that everything's online now. That's really like valuable advice, I would say. Thank you so much, Abby and Amelia, for joining today and being here, and Amelia for like helping me record the many podcasts and like just coming up with the idea in general. Thank you for joining and thank you for sharing. I'm 100% sure that international, like any international student listening to this, is gonna relate in a way or another to what we just like spoke about.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Special thanks to Abhishek for giving up his valuable time to speak to us. We hope this podcast made you realize you are not alone. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube.